All right, so got the video going, and this is about polynomials. It's a new unit, and I'm starting with this starter problem here because that's a polynomial, x squared plus 6x. That's a polynomial. Do you guys know what poly means? It means like more than one, okay? Nomial. What the heck is a nomial? Well, that's like a term. And so a polynomial means like multiple terms. All right, so there's terms. What the heck are you talking about with this terms, Mr. Surver? This is a term. X squared, that's one term. 6x, that's another term. So I got two terms in this thing. All right. Next thing we can talk about is what degree it is. See that little 2 up there? That means that this is degree 2. This is a second degree polynomial. So it sounds really fancy when you say that, but it's just like a math problem that's got 2 parts. Second degree polynomial. Now the second degree wasn't because it had 2 terms. It's because the biggest power was a 2. All right. Notice there is another power here, and some kids think you would like add them together. You do not. You just pick the biggest one. Okay. So that's a second degree polynomial. Now we're going to stick a negative 2 in. So what do? Well, right where those x squared and the 6x was, I'm going to write it over again. And it was x squared plus 6x. And I notice I put an empty parenthesis where the x was. That's huge. Use parentheses. I've done this a long time. You can trust me. I see so many mistakes because kids try to just do it in their head quick. You know what they'll do? They'll write negative 2 squared plus 6 negative 2. Do you get how that could really screw you up? Because if you have negative 2 squared, technically the answer is negative 4. But if you put in parentheses like you're supposed to, it's positive 4. That's a totally different thing. Number 2 reason to put parentheses, is that really 6 minus 2? You're like, you get distracted, you're talking to your friend, and then you don't remember that that was the times in there. But if you would put it in parentheses, do you get you wouldn't have thought 6 minus 2? If you had parentheses, you'd be like, oh, 6 times negative 2. So the parentheses are huge, and they only take an extra like half a second. Do parentheses. Do them. It'll help. All right, so let's finish this off. What's negative 2 squared? It is 4. What's 6 times negative 2? Is negative 12. Did anybody in here have a negative 8? Raise your hand if you had that. Awesome. Thank you. Online kids, any questions so far? Alban, just do a mic check for me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move on and get you to the stuff. We'll do the goal kind of stuff here. So what is a polynomial? Which of these are polynomials? I gave you the super simple definition, and there's always like more complicated details. You know, like if I say, what is a person? Well, technically, did you know that corporations get treated like a person when it comes to taxes? So there's a lot of people in the United States, but there's also corporations which get treated like people. They're an entity, is what they call them. So my point is, a person can be a company now. Do you know that there's actually a movement to take like apes that can talk and give them human rights? So they're a person too, even though they're an ape. My point is, you might start with a person is a human being, and then you go, oh, but you can actually count this and this. So there's always details, right? So same idea with this. How about which of these are polynomials that are normal? That's a normal one. And by the way, which degree is that? Know what degree that first one is?
2.
2 is correct, sir. Then this one, that's not normal. You see what made it not normal? What made it not normal is this little divided by x. I'm going to write it a different way for you, and maybe you'll see why it's that way. 7x to the negative 1. Do you remember that something to a negative power puts it down in the basement? So if you have negative powers, you're not supposed to have negative powers, so there's not a polynomial then. Look at constant positive whole number exponents. Constant positive whole number exponents. Sir, would you be willing to get the door for us? There's that weird tapping noise that's going to drive us all crazy. Thank you. Okay, and notice it said whole numbers. What part about this one is saying I'm not a polynomial? Do you see it? The 3/4 power. You can't have fraction powers. They exist, but it's just going to disqualify you from being a polynomial. All right, so that one's not a polynomial. How about something super simple like 3x? Is that a polynomial? Yes. And I know poly, I usually think of poly as many, but actually it means any number of. So this has only one. So this is called a monomial. I think you know what mono means. Mono means one. Monomial, as opposed to a binomial. And that would be if I just like add 7 to it. Now it's got 2 terms. That would be a binomial. All right. What's its degree? There isn't even a number. How am I supposed to know the degree? Because it's got a number. You know what number's there? It's got a 1. So that means this is degree 1. That's a degree 1 polynomial, which happens to also be a binomial. Polynomial is the name for like everything. And then if you want to get more specific, you can say binomial. Trinomial means 3. Monomial means 1. All right. Hope you're catching this. I think you are. So here's one. They show you it's got 3 terms. Poly means many, but I really think any number of is better than many, because otherwise you're going to think a single termed one is not a polynomial. But a single term, that's still a polynomial, even though it doesn't have many. All right. Types of nomial. Monomial, binomial, trinomial. So notice again, even though poly means many, one term counts. So just a number 6, it's still a polynomial. I sometimes think if you went back to elementary school and talked to like kindergartners who were just learning the number 6 and say, these are polynomials, kids. What are you talking about? There's so many things that we know about the simple numbers that they had no idea. Like today I taught you the natural numbers. Numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are called natural numbers. 0 is not natural. Anyway, there's a lot of things about that we know about high-level math that a kindergartner would be blown away by. In fact, frankly, a lot of kindergarten teachers don't even know things like what you just learned, that technically the number 6, or any number, is a polynomial. Who knows that? Well, you do. All right, so types of polynomial by degree. Notice, when they don't have an x, they're a degree 0. The way I think of that is, couldn't I put an x to the 0 power on this? Yeah, because x to the 0 power would just be 1, and 1 times 8 would be 8. And so you could just slap an x to the 0. That's why it's degree 0. This kind, degree 1, because it has a little 1 power that you just don't see. This kind, degree 2, because it's got a little squared. And this one, degree 3, because it's got a 3. But wait, Mr. Surver, there's a 1 over here. Which do I pick? The biggest one. It's degree 3, because 3 is bigger than 1. Don't you add them together? Nope, you don't. Okay. Standard form. This one, not in standard form. Somebody tell me, what do you think's wrong with how they wrote that? Come on, volunteer. Use your voice. I can actually hear you now instead of having to talk through the microphone and all that. What do you think's wrong with that one I just circled in red? Maybe you don't know this then. You're going to learn something. If it has a degree 6 in it, that's the biggest degree, then that's a degree 6 polynomial. That term should be first. See how they moved that to the front? It's kind of like my son is in the military. He's an officer in the military. He's moved up to first lieutenant. Okay? And he's eventually probably going to get to be a major So there'll be a major server in the family. That's kind of cool. Anyway, do you get that a general would be like the boss? Okay. And so if you're lining up in a military thing, they have rules for that kind of stuff. You know, like they obviously don't put the general at the back. You know, they're like the boss. They would be up on stage, and then like the people underneath the generals, those are called the lieutenant generals. Okay, so they would be like underneath the general. And then you move down to the majors, and then you move down to lieutenants. And there's of the lieutenants, there's second lieutenants and first lieutenant. And first is better than second. And so anyway, there's like a hierarchy. Well, same idea here. This is degree 6. It goes in the front. Degree 3, that's not as big of a deal. They aren't as much of a boss. Okay, so they move back in line. These guys are near the end of the line, but this is even a degree 0, so it's at the very end. Okay, so basically you just put them in order. So now, one thing that's important, this -7 used to be like second from the front, and it ends up in the back. Notice the negative goes with it. Whatever sign was on it goes with it. Some people think you just leave all the signs alone and move the numbers. No, the numbers and the signs go together. So see how that 7 is the best example because it's the only one that was negative. You had to move the negative with the 7 and put it at the end. Right, so evaluate, that just means stick the number in. That's what we did at the beginning of the hour. I just wanted to remind you that that's the same exact thing. That's why I started with it. Okay, so get to this purple page here called evaluate. And everybody stick a -2 in that. And you might be like, holy crap, you want me to put in -2 to the 6th power? Yeah, except I'll be your calculator. I know some of you aren't going to be able to do that in your head. And I totally get it. I can barely do it in my head. But I can. But I'm going through and putting in a parenthesis for all my x's. I would actually honestly recommend you don't put in the -2 first. I would put that in last. So I just make sure I wrote it all down with parentheses instead of the x. Then I go stick in a -2. Now, it's not going to be super easy, but I can do it. I've got 2 to the 5th memorized. That's 32. So what do you think 2 to the 6th is? 2 to the 3rd, sorry, 2 to the 5th was 32. What do you think 2 to the 6th is? 64. Very good, 64. And now it's negative, and I got to go, okay, there were 6 negative signs. They're all going to cancel, because you got 2 sets of 2. Okay, so that's positive 64. Then I got 2 to the 5th. Remember me saying that was 32? But it's negative 32 because there's a negative in there. And a negative done 5 times would still say negative. So that's 3 times -32. I'm not trying to do that in my head yet. That would be too much to try to do all at once. I can do 3 times 32 now, though. It's really, like, once you write it down, it's not that hard. Now I go 3 times 32 is 30, 60, 90, 246, -96. And then this is plus 10 and then plus 4. So, kind of ignoring this question for now, I got 64 minus 96 plus, and I'm just going to do these, 14. And now, let's see here. 64 minus 96. I don't like it. I better get used to having my graphing calculator out so that I can do problems like that quick. You guys all have your iPads. Cheaters. All right, somebody cheat for me. Help me out so I don't have to go find my graphing calculator. I'm making a note for myself, though, that I should go get one. Put it on this desk. Somebody grab your iPad, type in 64 minus 96. I know it's negative something. And I could do it, but it would take me a long time. Thank you very much. Negative 32 plus 14. Now that one's easier to do in my head. I can do that one. Way I like to do it goes like this. negative 30, and then the negative 2 would cancel off 2 of those. So that would make this 12. And then it's negative 30 plus 12, and that's easier to do in my head. That's like negative 20 plus 2, because I took the positive 10 and the negative 10 and canceled them out. And then that makes negative 18. All right, I heard a kaboom. I think that usually means there's a question in the crowd. Somebody listening along at home. You got a question?
Yeah, can you scroll up a bit by the, on the red part where it's like, in and where it's like minus 5 parentheses negative 2, is this supposed to be squared?
Oh, no, you're right. There's a squared in the problem up here. Right there, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, this should have been squared, and that's going to make that not a 10. Hold on, just a second. Would you agree that that negative 2 has to be squared? Yeah. Okay, so then that's going to be 4. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. So yeah, so that's not a 10. That's going to be negative 20. Thank you for catching that. And then the negative 20 plus the 4 makes negative 16 right there. I better for the people at home at least clean this up and get the right final answer. Negative 16. And then it's actually easier. I'm going to put those two together. Makes negative 112. And negative 112. And positive 64. Okay, so I think you come up with negative 48. The people that caught me before, did you get negative 48? All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Thanks for your help on that. You're right, I forgot a squared. Okay, so that's evaluating, and they're just kind of a pain. You just grab a calculator, and it's totally okay to use a calculator. If I were typing it in the calculator, I'd use the parentheses, which are right above the 7 key, I think. There's a parentheses in there somewhere near the 7 keys.
Yeah, it's above the 8.
7 above the 8? Okay, that was close anyway. And use those parentheses keys because whenever there's an X, there's a parenthesis. Okay? Those should be your happy place on the test. They'll ask you to do one of those, and it'll be easy. You just stick the number in with a parenthesis, and you'll probably get it right. Okay. So what do the parentheses mean? Well, there's a big difference between parentheses that have a plus between them and a parenthesis that has a minus between them. Why? Because that minus has to get distributed. Do you get if it was a negative 1, you would know you have to distribute it to both things? That's what it really is. When there's a negative in front of a parenthesis, there's really a negative 1 in front of the parenthesis and it has to get distributed in. So in other words, this all the time, kids get this confused. Why do you think they get it wrong? I'll guarantee you, there's going to be somebody who's going to have this problem on the test, and they're going to write this. 5a plus 6b minus 4a plus b. Did you get what I just did there? See what I mean? Yeah, because there should be negative b. Why? Because that negative is really a negative 1, and that should be negative b at the end. And now the negative b and the 6b can go together, and that would be 5b. And the a's can go together, and this would be 5a minus 4a is 1a. So a plus 5b. Some people get the 6b and the b confused. Remember, that's really a 1b. If you get confused on that, just put a number in front of it. I get it. Some people go 4x minus x. Do you have any friends that are bad enough at math that they just say that that's 4? That happens all the time. Not like everybody does it, but it happens like once in a math class. They think that the x is canceled off, so there's just a 4. No. You got to think 4x minus 1x, so that's really 3x. Don't fall into that trap. Okay, and then here's a typical question for today. That is a polynomial. And now you got to just like add up a bunch of terms. Notice if there's a plus like that, you can just drop the parentheses, just like they're not even there. If there's a minus like that, you got to distribute it. Now these take so long, I'd rather have you working on homework than doing this one all the way out. So I'll just do one of them. And I'd like you to do that top one with me. And then we'll be pretty much done. And we'll start your homework together. All right, so this top one. I can drop that plus. So I can just write them all out. But do I really want to rewrite all the numbers? No, it takes forever. Put the 5x to the third with the 2x to the third, and that makes 7x to the third. And if you notice there was a bigger degree somewhere, put that in front. Remember how the biggest degree has to be first? All right, now we'll do negative 6x squared. There's no other x squareds to go with it. It's lonely. It's kind of like the last of the dodo birds. At some point, there was a last dodo, and it was the only one, and there was no other like dodos on the earth. And then that last dodo died, and now there's no more dodo birds. So there was only negative 6 of the x squareds. They had nobody else to join up with. All right, and then last but not least, plus x and minus 7x is the last two that can be combined. That will make negative 6x. Remember, that's a 1x. And then there's a plus 3. Yay. Notice I have it in order from biggest degree to smallest. There's a degree 1 on that last one, and then there's a degree 0 on this, but you don't really ever write that. But we should know that that's degree 0 at the end. You've made it. You've made it through a normal day of math class. And at least I've made it through a normal day of math class. That's how I feel about it. And now, this is the part where we have a Schoology quiz. And I would like to do a secondary attendance here by you all jumping into the Schoology quiz so that I can know that you found it and you know where it is. And that's all there is for the lesson for today.